Good morning and welcome to Guided Meditations and More. My name is Ade Richardson, and this is a page where I offer guided meditations and also host interviews with various types of people, talking about a variety of topics. Let's see, my schedule changed up a little bit. It used to be a daily 7:30 a.m. guided meditation, but now I'm doing Thursday mornings at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time and Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Times. So that's the new schedule. I had to cut back with school starting and getting the kids ready and all of that stuff, and also with my own personal practice as well. So today I'm with Cecelia Waterman-Santiago. Welcome, Cecelia. Always nice to have you here.
Always nice to be here. Thank you.
And I'm going to read your bio. A former Wall Street marketer, Cecelia is happily in service of the heart as a Reiki master, certified yoga teacher, spiritual advisor, writer, photographer, and creator of holistic products. Cecelia has a nonprofit company called House of Rising Sun, of which I'll post the website in the description area, which will be a residential group home for girls that have been sexually exploited. Cecelia is grateful for everything, and all is a blessing, and all is very, very well.
Thank you,
true.
Ade.
And I didn't mention that you offer Reiki as well. So I just want to, that's part of, I guess that would be under the your company, Avalon. Yeah.
Avalai Wellness. And we'll put a link up for that too. So besides the essential oil products, I also offer holistic services, therapeutic products such as Reiki and yoga, things that help to heal, meditations, energy clearings, things of that sort.
Yeah, it's great. And I've had a couple of sessions with Cecelia, and it was really great. You know, it was really helpful. So I highly recommend it. And
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So let's get right into it. Today we're talking about this book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Coelho. Yes.
So this is pretty much my first time with the book. You know, I went on vacation to Martha's Vineyard, as you know, and so I thought I'm going to lay on the beach and read the book and enjoy it. So I got to Martha's Vineyard and I realized I forgot the book. And I started to panic, as I always do. You know, I just started to, well, what am I going to do? So luckily, what is it called? Audiobooks? I forget what the name is.
Is it Kindle?
What is it called? I have it right here. It's Audible. Okay. So Audible has a service where you can get, and this is not an Audible commercial, but there's a service you can get audiobooks. And they have a free trial membership. So I got the free trial and I listened to it like 3 times because I'm not used to listening to audiobooks and the kids are talking. They just think I'm ignoring them for no reason, but I'm trying to, you know, this is a book that you really have to pay attention because there's so many messages in the book that you can lose. But anyway, enough of me. Let's get right into it. I believe you said you're going to start with a little summary of the book?
Well, yes, I thought that would be nice because some people are not that familiar with the book. And I read it long time ago, so I had to revisit it. And I'm glad I read it. And I was going to listen to it, and I thought about that. But I think you miss so much because you get distracted. Well, I do.
Yeah.
And I start hearing other things and paying attention to other things. But yeah, I'll read the summary of it and give people an overview, and then we can pick up some topics and talk about those. And the book is so chock full of wisdom and wonderful quotes, and just I love it so much. But let me get started. I have to put on my glasses because, of course, I can't see. So The Alchemist follows the journey of an Andalusian shepherd boy, and Andalusia is in Spain. It's set in Spain. Shepherd boy named Santiago. Believing a recurring dream to be prophetic, he asks a gypsy fortune teller in a nearby town about its meaning. The woman interprets the dream as a prophecy, telling the boy that he will discover a treasure at the Egyptian pyramids. And early into his journey, he meets an old king named Melchizedek, or the king of Salem, who tells him to sell his sheep so as to travel to Egypt, and introduces the idea of a personal legend. And a personal legend is really like your soul contract. It's, you know, your goal, what you're put here on earth to do or to be. And it says your personal legend is what you've always wanted to accomplish. Everyone, when they are young, knows what their personal legend is. And early in his arrival to Africa, a man who claims to be able to take Santiago to the pyramids instead robs him of his money and the money that he'd made from selling his sheep. And then Santiago then embarks on a long path of working for a crystal merchant so that he can make enough money to fulfill his personal legend and go to the pyramids after all of his money was stolen. And then along the way, the boy meets an Englishman who came in search of an alchemist and continues his travel with this new companion. When they reach an oasis, Santiago meets and falls in love with an Arabian girl named Fatima, to whom he proposes marriage. She promises to do so only after he completes his journey. Frustrated at first, he later learns that true love will not stop, nor must one sacrifice it for one's personal destiny, since to do so robs it of truth. And then the boy then encounters a wise alchemist who also teaches him to realize his true self. And together they risk a journey through the territory of warring tribes, where the boy is forced to demonstrate his oneness with the soul of the world. And by turning himself into a samum. I mean, samum is a big windstorm before he is allowed to proceed. And when he begins digging within the site of the pyramids, he is robbed again, but accidentally learns from the leader of the thieves that the treasure he sought all along was in the ruined church where he had his original dream. So he comes full circle and he goes back to where he began. So that's basically the synopsis of the book.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really a great book. And also, by the way, I just want to mention to people watching, if you have any questions for Cecelia, feel free to send them in the comment section below this video. I'll try to, I'm looking at my phone at the same time. So if you see me looking away, it's at the phone. So you answered my first question. Like, what's a personal legend? Is it kind of like following your dreams?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And it's what the book talks about, what Paulo Coelho talks about in the book, is that we're all born with this dream, you know, with something that we love and want to be and want to do. But then he talks about this mysterious force that eventually stops us. As we get older, we let go of our dreams. And he shows examples of that throughout the book. And he shows, for instance, the crystal maker, the merchant, the one that Santiago works for on the hill. So his dream was always to make enough money and go to Mecca. Well, with Santiago being there and helping him along the way, he starts to build his business and it starts booming again. And people are buying his crystals. And Santiago comes up with these great ideas like, let's serve tea out of your crystal, and people will come, and let's build a shelf outside on the hill, and people will see and they will come. And so he has these wonderful ideas, and the business starts to grow. But there's a point in the book where they're talking about, well, we've made enough money right now, and Santiago can continue his journey, his personal legend. And the crystal shopkeeper, merchant, says, well, I'm not going to go to Mecca, and you're not going to go back to buy more sheep. So it's interesting, the contrast, the way Paulo Coelho set it up. So here's one person who has come to accept that he's not going to realize his dream, but he knows that Santiago will. So it's very interesting to me, the dichotomy.
Yeah, and I like that character, and I think part of does he have that character, the tea shop, or the merchant,
the crystal merchant,
merchant.
Yes.
I mean, one thing that the book seems to point to, one of the obstacles that Santiago comes against throughout the story, and sometimes the other characters are symbolic of this, is fear. That's a big theme. One of the big obstacles. And so can you talk on that? Like, one of the things, like, it seemed like the crystal merchant was, a lot of people are afraid of failure. And that's one of my things. And it seems like his was the fear of success, because he would have to, change his life in some way.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So and I don't know if I can find it, is a great quote that Paulo Coelho has, and he talks about fear and how basically not following your heart. Now remember, you've got love on one part of the spectrum and you've got fear on the other, and they can't live in the same house. But when people are so afraid that they can't follow their dreams, he describes it as a curse. He describes it as a curse. And one of the biggest bottlenecks or blockages or reasons why many of us don't fulfill our dreams, the dreams that we had in our childhoods, is because we are afraid. Someone along the way, some mysterious force along the way, led us to believe that we're not good enough. We're not enough. We don't have the tools. When really, if it is our personal legend, if it is our soul's dream, our soul's reason for being, then the universe conspires with us to make it happen.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because and I remember that part where he says that mysterious force, and that's one of the things that Santiago was very curious to know about. What is this? And I was too, as I was listening to it. It kind of brought up my own fears of failure and things like that. And it does seem to be like this mysterious force. And what he was saying also, I think, is how this mysterious force can work in our advantage as well. And like, it could kind of help us if we use it. So if we use what we may consider to be an obstacle or a disadvantage to help us to grow. So
yeah, I see that. It's like the old saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." One of the things that they talk about in the book, which I found very interesting, is that at the beginning of your path, when you're pursuing your personal legend, you get beginner's luck. So it's like the universe giving you a taste of what can come. But in time, as you pursue your personal legend, then the universe starts to challenge you. You get challenges and tests along the way. And oftentimes, when you're just about to give up, or you're right here close to, because a lot of times people give up when they're right here. Well, the universe sends signs. Well, for Santiago, he brought in the king of Salem. So he said that he also, now remember Melchizedek, he's the king of Salem. So remember, he appears to people in different ways. He first appeared as an old man sitting, and then he revealed that he had all these great jewels on a breastplate. And you could tell that he was of substance, I would say. I think that's the way they described it in the book, that he had money, that he came from substantial wealth, something to that effect. But he was the king. So it's interesting how he weaves in Christianity and the Muslim religion and different aspects of the Bible in it, because Melchizedek was a king, a Jewish king, I believe, in the book. So it is biblical that he talks about him. So he shows up in various forms when people are about to give up on their dream, on their personal legend. And he doesn't always show up in the same way. And so I found that very curious. And the author doesn't go into it in depth about like, who is he exactly? Like, is he an angel? You know, is he a prophet? You know, he's a king, but there's obviously something more there.
Yeah, I got the sense of that as well, and kind of reminded me a little bit of the Bhagavad Gita, where when Krishna reveals himself to Arjuna, Arjuna just thinks this is his friend, who's the chariot driver. I think this is how the story goes, and then Krishna reveals himself, and he realized that this is like a enlightened being, and so I got the sense with some of these characters, they're perceived in one way, but then they're revealed to be something else. So the message I got from that as well is to learn to listen and to look for those signs. And maybe we could talk a little bit about that, because the book talks a lot about omens. It talks about how we are in this interdependent relationship with nature. So nature's communicating with us, and we need to be communicating in some way with nature. So there's this relationship going on that, obviously nowadays we've to a large extent lost touch with, but he was pointing to, the importance of that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I think one of the most transitional parts of the book was when, it's, first of all, it's more than, I think the book speaks to the fact that it's really about the journey, not so much the destination. And we watch Santiago go from a shepherd boy musing about a merchant's daughter to a very powerful alchemist. And the transition really, and the transformation occurs gradually, but we really see it when he's interacting with the warriors around the fire and the other alchemists, the alchemists that he's learning from, the true alchemist, tells them that he will do this feat, because he's magical. And he has to transform himself into the wind. And he has to do this, he has to speak to the elements, and he speaks with the wind, he speaks with the sun, and eventually, through this whole process, his power, which the alchemist saw within him, within Santiago, is brought up. And the alchemist knew this. He knew that he was the expected person. Remember, there was an omen that came to the alchemist that said that he would expect an important man. So we think that it's the Englishman who he's traveling with, because he's looking for the alchemist. He wants to be the alchemist. But as it turns out, when he meets the alchemist tells him to go practice making gold. But meanwhile, he takes this journey with Santiago because he sees and he knows, and he's testing Santiago, you know. And when he first meets Santiago, he's scary. He arrives on this big white horse and he points his sword at him and all of this. But Santiago doesn't back down. And he said, I had to test your courage. So we're always, I think the lesson here is that the earth, the sky, the universe is always speaking to us. And maybe in not so graphic a way with you talking directly to the sun and the sun speaking back, because then it's personalized, but more in signs and symbols. And sometimes you may hear something in your head, a voice telling you something. So we receive omens and we receive symbols and signals and communications from the earth. And animals are wonderful examples of beings that are so in tune to nature. They know when storms are coming. You know, it's almost like they are talking to the wind or the element, but they know when things are about to happen. And people, indigenous people generally watch animals and learn from them. And so they would escape tragedy by following the animals. So, and in the book, he talks about, this is how he realizes that he's predicting things. He has this power, is when the two hawks are in the air and they begin to fight. And hawks don't usually fight each other. They usually fight smaller birds. So that was a symbol that, or signal to him that these warriors were coming. And so he taught, with putting his own life at risk, he talks about that. He gives the warning that these warriors are coming, because remember, there's a big war going on at this time. And sure enough, the warriors come, Santiago gets rewarded with gold pieces, and he has to choose whether to stay there as a prophet or to leave and continue on his personal journey, personal legend.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great messages there. The you know, going back to the Englishman and how the alchemist picked Santiago the shepherd rather than the Englishman, who had all of this knowledge and intelligence and was really book smart. But it seemed that, you know, well, the Santiago had this heart and this
Yes.
kind of, you know, this thing about him, you know. So the message there was, it takes more than just, you know, knowledge.
Book smarts, yes, yeah. And learning and reading. The journey was in the doing. That's when he put his book down, because he realized that he was learning more by watching the desert than sticking his head in the book. So.
And that story at the end where he's asked to transform, you know, into the wind. So there's this message of having the power to transform. And so where does that come from, and how does that? So there's a few things, you know. There's let's see, it seems to be a story, you know, alchemy in general seems to be about purification. So I think the term on the material level is to turn what is it? What kind of material? Something into gold. Is it lead or not
Lead.
lead? Yeah, lead.
Lead.
Okay. So it has to take out, the process is removing the impurities, and the result after that is the purity that is now gold. Now I have a hard time sometimes with the word purity and impurity, because it seems like it just brings me back to my religious upbringing and the priest saying, this is a sin, that's a sin, and me sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to go to hell. I've done all of these, like a lot of these things, or I felt that way, So, what do they mean about purity in the story?
He doesn't really. I, I don't remember him describing purity per se, except maybe free from contamination, free to its glorious form. Um, that's a wonderful question.
Or maybe it is maybe it is the kind of transcendence of those fears, those kind of things that were holding him back.
Holding him back, yeah, becoming pure. Well, remember when he is transforming into the wind, he is told by the sun, and remember the wind is listening because he wants to see, the wind wants to see, and I don't know if the wind is really characterized as a man or woman or masculine, feminine, but the wind wants to see if there's something that the sun doesn't know. And he describes it as sort of like the wind is giddy about it. Well, the sun, the sun, like siblings, right? So the sun suggests, advises Santiago to ask the one. So it's when he talks to God, that was my interpretation of it. And they say that he touches the soul of the one. I think those were the words. But he went deep, and because we're all connected to the one, to source, but he went deep and he really connected with source energy, and he became one with the one, and that's how he transformed. And so if you are one, you would be as pure as they come, right?
Yeah, because it seems like he in a sense sort of resolved that sense of separation. That's where I feel like
Yes.
maybe that sense of impurity comes from, because it's this kind of this
He had to
belief.
believe that he was magical, but when he did that, he knew he was magic, and he
Yeah,
knew he could do it because he was, and he knew it was like the fear was washed away. There was no fear. There was just knowing.
yeah,
And when we get to that point, and we've probably all have gotten to that point in some way, some form or fashion along the way, when there was something that we did it so well that we just felt like we were one with whatever we were doing. We were flowing with it. And there was no stress, there was no strife, there was no challenge. It was like you were flowing with something.
yeah.
And it reminds me of when I used to run, and I went to school up near the Canadian border, and they had all these fields, and it was just beautiful. The North Country is beautiful of New York. And I used to run like 12 miles, and there would always come a point during my run where I really couldn't feel my feet touching the ground. It was like I was floating. And now I'm in college at this time. I don't know much about meditation or any of that, but it was clearly a moving meditation, and where my mind was clear, and I was just running and breathing and feeling. And it was one of the most amazing feelings that, I've had. So
Yeah.
you get to a point, and we've probably all at some point, most of us anyway, doing something, gotten to the point where we're flowing with it. And it's just perfect unison.
It reminds me of Michael Jordan when he was playing in, I forget what game, but he scored like 50 something points, and he just goes, he just puts his hands out. He doesn't, everything was just going in. They call it the zone.
Yeah,
So
the zone.
yeah.
That's it. That's it. The zone. Yeah.
And one of the other things that the and just like touching back on that, the becoming one, and sort of that feeling of separation resolving. I had that brings up for me how a lot of times we are in resistance to life, with life. And maybe that's a part of that impurity, that resistance. I'll say it, that's just my opinion. But I was, going through a sort of difficult emotions, and I was going for a walk, and then I just decided at that moment, it just occurred to me to just be with what is here. There was this inward resistance going on. Like I didn't want to accept, this part of myself. And then, and it was on a very physical level. So then as I was walking, I just thought, even resist the resistance, that clenching that was going on. And once that decision occurred, this relaxation, then I was able to really explore what was really there. And so it kind of brings up for me how much, and maybe this is why he picked Santiago instead of the Englishman who was knowledgeable and book smart, is we have to kind of get by the conceptual mind and our interpretations of what things are and how things are, and really explore for ourselves. But we can't do that without having some courage and without kind of taking a leap. And that's one of the things I got in the stories. He's had to sacrifice a lot and to go on faith and to take many leaps throughout this story, many risks. And I know the author talks about the importance of risk, constantly taking a risk. So
Yeah, no, I think that's an important point that he does, and the king shows up to him once he has recognized and accepted his personal legend. So he was ready. He was ready, and it was at the point where he had sold all of his sheep in pursuit of his personal legend. So he shows up and to help him along the way. And one of the things too about fear that I wanted to touch on is, remember the camel driver? And this is another one of the characters. I think these characters are just marvelous. But the camel driver, one of the things that he said, which I thought was so wise and profound, is he lives in the present. Because everybody was worried about the warring factions coming, the warriors coming and raiding the camp and all of that, but he wasn't. And when Santiago asked him, he said, I live in the present. I don't worry about the past. I don't worry about the future. Right here, I'm enjoying this. I believe he was eating something, and he said, and this is so I'm happy. When you live in the present, you're not as fearful. When you're worried about the past or worried about the future or lamenting what went on in the past that you can't change, it's gone. So when you're living here, like right now, we could be worried about what's going on out there, the presidential elections. We could be worried about all sorts of things, coronavirus, but we are here right now. talking, speaking with each other and whoever else is watching, and we're good. We're good. All is well. So when I say all is well, I don't mean like, oh, the whole world is, I'm not looking at, like, I may be looking through rose-colored glasses from time to time, but really what I'm saying is right here, right now, if you take stock of what's going on for you in the present moment, unless you're in a hospital somewhere, but then you're getting treatment. But in most cases, you're okay. You're well. You're right now. You're fine. You're not being dragged out your house. You're not being beaten. You're not, in most cases. So that's living in the present. And he touches on that. And I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah. That's a great message. Something that I think we can all learn from. It's not always easy.
No.
Let's see. So we talked about the fears and he also, one of the other things besides sacrificing his sheep and a good deal of his money, and the part that seemed like really tough, from my perspective, is that moment where he met Fatima.
Yeah.
The woman of his dreams, and there was this connection, and you think, okay, they're going to just go into the sunset and live, life happily ever after. But even his personal legend, his dream, fulfilling that, the message I got was more important than this relationship. And perhaps can you talk about why that is, and how does that relate into the collective, like one's responsibility? How does that fit into the overall responsibility that one has to the world, like fulfilling, because I got the sense it's not just about him.
Right. We're here for a purpose, and our purpose matters. And when he mentions in the book, when we are pursuing our personal legend, when we're on our way to our dreams and pursuing our dreams, we are happy. And the world is happy, he says. Now, I believe that's because it's the energy. Because they say, do what you love and the money will follow. All of these wonderful quotes. It comes back to this. If you're doing what you love, if you're working at what you love, and then it's not really work, you're enjoying yourself. If you're a wonderful director, photographer, movie maker, and you're doing this, you're living your passion, you're happy, and you're bringing people around you, and that energy is transferable and contagious. And so you're making other people happy. Not everyone, but a lot of people. So you're raising the vibration of the energetic frequency around you, and it affects all involved. And I think that's what he means by that. And he says, if you don't, then it's a curse. So, because this is what you're here to do. And I thought it was lovely. And I love that Fatima was strong enough and wise enough to know that if he did not do this, he may be resentful and bitter later in life. And so she said, you have to do this. I will only marry you if you do this. She said, I am a woman of the desert. We wait for our men to come back. And sometimes they come back and sometimes they don't. She said, but if they don't come back, she said, then we see them in the clouds, in the sky, because when you pass, you go back to nature, you go back to the earth and to the sky. So I thought that was so profound. And it's like us, we're all connected, right? So if you or I or in relationship and you have this passion that you have to explore. If I tell you, you can't do this, no, we've got to do this, then you may say, okay, because you want to be with me or you love me, but there's a part of you, maybe there's a part of you that dies. Maybe there's a flame that goes out, and there's a bit of bitterness there because you haven't lived your dream, your passion. Then maybe you come back in another life and do it.
So there's a few questions I have, to follow up on. Not even sure if we will have enough time for all of them, but one of them is doing what you love. Finding your as it connects to that's your personal legend. But and this is just the way my mind works sometimes. What about that person that loves the thrill, loves robbing banks, and they're really good at it, and they just get excited. They're coming up with the plan. They get the crew. They it's their time to socialize with people and come up with the plan together and draw out the maps and everything else, and they get really excited, and that's what they love to do, and they're good at it. They don't even get caught, but they're willing to take that risk and make that sacrifice to do this. What would you comment on that?
Well, to each his own. There are actually, we know there are thrill seekers, people who love the thrill, and they explore that in various ways. And maybe there are some people who explore that thrill by going on crazy rides, what I consider crazy, or diving out of planes, or doing things that are risky. And others do it in other ways, maybe by robbing someone else, by harming someone else. And I think it's maybe it's your level of awareness and divinity or soul connection to spirit, how deep you are connected to love. When we are heart-centered and vibrating in the energy of love, we're not really thinking about going out and harming another person. So maybe for thrills, maybe if your family's starving, you're going to rob a loaf of bread or whatever to feed your family. But not talking about that. For thrills, people who get thrills out of harming someone else, there's an imbalance there. You can fulfill that rush, that need for a rush, by doing other things. You don't have to cause harm or pain to others. And so it comes back to me of a place of awareness, a level of awareness and understanding and heart-centeredness and balance and evolution and growth, consciousness, That's my perspective.
Yeah. No, that I agree, and I think also it also I guess brings up what is love. There's we have different interpretations out there. Some may call it they think of the emotional sort of romantic sense when you think of love, or not just the romantic, but this emotional feeling of love. But I don't know, for me, it also is connected with our authentic sense of self, that place of oneness. And when I think of that, it also reminds me of the harmony and balance that is out there. So I wonder if that bank robber, maybe they are fulfilling their personal legend in some way, and it's creating some sort of balance. Not that they should go out and do it.
You mean like Robin Hood? Robin Hood stole from the rich and gave to the poor. So maybe that's what he's out there doing. He's doing some good stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. You know, I grew up in Brooklyn, and, you know, the way I grew up, you know, we got into some, I'm not the same person now, but I was sharing that story to, you know, I could identify with those feelings. I can just say I did some things back when I was young that I'm not very happy with, but it was exciting.
It's a journey. Yeah, I grew up in Brooklyn too. I grew up in Red Hook, Brooklyn. So yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And it was not the Red Hook that it is today. Today I think they were calling it Liberty Heights for a while, but
Okay.
it's totally transformed, gentrified.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed is in the story, and I'm not sure when it was written, but you know, it kind of felt a little bit dated in terms of it's like the man following his personal legend, and Fatima, oh, I'll see you when you get back. Don't worry, I'll be waiting here for you. And, you know, so that's just something I picked up on.
I'm glad I didn't say it, but okay. But I think it's supposed to be set in the 1800s, I believe. I was doing some reading on the background of it, and someone had written around 1850, something like that. He deliberately, intentionally does not give it a time, but because he wants it to be timeless, the book. And we still have cultures today where the man goes off and the woman stays home, and you know, she doesn't pursue her personal journey. But a lot of that's changing throughout the world, as we can see. But yeah, that's one of the things I did think about is, did Fatima have a personal legend? But maybe that was her personal legend, to meet him, you know, because things were different back then.
Yeah.
Things were different during caveman times.
Yeah.
With the Neanderthals. Yeah.
Yeah, the one's personal legend probably, you know, capturing a certain amount of animals. Well, you know, you're a vegan, so I won't go into that.
Hunting. Well,
yeah.
You know, as we evolve, we don't have to hunt for our food.
Yeah. So there's a quote I wanted to read that I thought was great, and it might have been the one that you were looking for. I don't know. It says, "We are afraid of losing what we have, whether it's our life or our possessions and property. But this fear evaporates when we understand that our life stories and the history of the world were written by the same hand." That's such a beautiful and profound quote. That was it? Yeah, I thought it might be, because I thought you know.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That was it. And it's
There's so much
beautiful.
in that. Yeah.
Yes. And there's another quote in there that which I really love, and he talks about that when you're pursuing your personal legend, that the fear of fear is greater than the fear itself, something to that respect. And yeah, it's so beautiful. It's so full of profound quotes and words of wisdom, and it's a journey.
And I really resonated with this quote because when he talks about afraid of losing what we have, you know, there's this saying, afraid of losing what you have or not getting what you want. And that's, you know, one of the fears that I've come against. And it can be an obstacle, you know, when we're embarking on our journey, trying to fulfill our dreams. when we're afraid, when we're in this space of comfort and everything is the way that we'd like it to be. So if I take that risk and I go after this, maybe I'll lose what I have, or maybe I'll lose someone's, the way I think that they think about me. I want to be thought of in a certain way. So what if I take this risk and then someone thinks that I'm, stupid or silly or whatever, so it really, I think, talks about that. And, so maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And also, when we understand our stories, the history of the world was written by the same hand. So it really talks about this divine force that's weaving this reality, like everything that's happening is like,
Well, yeah, no, I totally get what you mean. And um, for so long, I wanted to do something to have a business working with girls and doing something that really felt good. And for a long time, I worked in finance. I worked in a in an investment advisory firm and sold stocks and investment vehicles to people who had a lot of money. And I met a lot of wonderful people along the way, some brilliant people, made some wonderful friends, but it wasn't where my heart was. And for so long, I had to decide, do I leave and do this, or do I continue where the money is? Because there was a lot of money there. And then what happens to me? Will that affect the way people look at me? Look at what she's doing. She was making all that money and doing so well. And, and now what is she doing? Creating soaps? What is she, that sort of thing. And for me, I had to think about that for a long time. Finally, the universe said, it's time, do it. And so I did. And the joy that I feel when I help people, when I provide them with like lotions and spray, and they're like, oh my God, this feels so good. Or if I make an elixir for someone who's losing their hair, and they show me where the hair is actually growing in, the little fuzz because I provided something. Or last week I had wonderful energy sessions, and in each energy session was different, but it was amazing. One woman said that she saw white light around her. I've had people tell me that they've connected during the session, they've connected with loved ones, or they felt healed. Or so those things make me sure that I'm doing the right thing. A woman told me, and this is the first time that I had heard this. Like, I've heard many things, like you're talented, you're gifted, and I love this. This is wonderful. But she said, you are so amazing. You have a gift, and it's a gift from God. That's what she said. And the connection, it just brought tears to my eyes because I felt I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I may have to get a job tomorrow, but today I'm doing no. But when you're pursuing your personal legend, when you're doing what you really love, what your soul wants you to do, then nothing else really matters. That's the most important thing. And I think that's what the book is conveying, that your personal legend, your soul's journey is why you are here. And it doesn't matter what people say or think, because what do people know?
yeah,
Most people are not happy with themselves. So, many
exactly.
people are doing, and chasing money, they're just not happy. But they go to work each day. They're stressed out each day. They make money. They go to sleep. They dream of retirement so that they can take that vacation, take that trip around the world, or do whatever it is that they really want to do. And then sometimes they pass away before they retire, having never done what they came here to do. So maybe they come again. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the work that you do is wonderful. And especially now, I think it's really needed. And this brings back to like the story where Santiago is following his heart and he's being led by these wise people and omens to trust, because the way I saw this good analogy recently, this woman set up these cubes that formed into a pyramid, and she put it in a bowl. And she said at the top of the pyramid are the powerful, like the Donald Trumps, the people that are seeking just power and control and just wealth. Nothing wrong with wealth, but only like money and power. And then you have like the 99, I mean the 1% or whatever, and then the people below that are struggling, and then below everyone are the light workers, the healers. You know, you think that there are, but below everyone, and she showed that the analogy is they're at the very bottom, and then she poured water into the bowl, and she said that they're holding this vibration and it's melting everything. And so they're not having to convince the people at the top to come to the bottom. Everything, that whole structure is coming down. So there's not going to be any hierarchy. It's all coming down into this soup, or this oneness. It was such a beautiful analogy. And she connected it with following your passion, following, you know, doing healing, doing art, doing these things where it may be perceived on some level that, you know, it's not this, great thing. It's not making a ton of money or whatever, you know, but it's much needed for what we're moving into now.
And what we really want to do will happen. The universe will conspire to make it happen. And when I was traveling throughout, when I was in Indonesia and in Bali with a girlfriend of mine, we were traveling together. There were young people there that had pretty much hitchhiked their way to Bali, and they were panhandling for, you know, money to, because you could stay at a hotel for $15. So you have $1, do you have, you know, so we were giving out money, but these kids had come from California, had come from different parts of the world to hang out in Bali, to surf, because that's their dream, to surf the big waves of Bali. That was, you know, and that's what they did. I thought it was amazing. Amazing. And a quick story, I was buying a camera for my trip, and it was a man working in the store, a young man, and he was helping me pick out a camera. And he asked where I was going, and I told him of my love for travel. He said, I love to travel too, but I know I'll never be able to do that. I just know I'm never going to be able to do it. And I said, exactly, because that's what you're telling yourself. Change your story. Tell yourself every day that you're going to do it, and you will do it.
That's such a great point.
Yeah. And he said, okay, I will. Like, I don't know if he ever did, but I hope he did.
So that'll bring us to perhaps the last question, and then I'll let you wrap up after that to share anything that you felt was missing. And probably the key question, you know, that some may be wondering is, how do you know what your personal legend is? You know, because, you know, sometimes I can imagine that we get started on something that we're passionate about and that we love to do, but we feel defeated because we've come up with obstacles, and and have this own sort of inner struggle going on. So then we may take it to be, okay, well, then that's not my personal legend, because if it's my personal legend, then maybe there won't be any struggle, at all. But I don't know if that's true. So,
Well, no, there is struggle, because one of the things that he mentions in the book, which I totally agree with, is that as kids, we know what we want to do. We know what we enjoy. We have fun. And then somebody or something happens along the way to dissuade us. And I remember growing up and saying, I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to sing. And then my mother saying, go to school, get an education, you know, just, and then I was in these pre-med classes for a long time because, but then medicine, energy work, and healing was what I was drawn to. So there are things along the way. It's a pulling of the heart. So we recognize it when it comes. It's what we really love doing. Just look at what you really, really enjoy doing, no matter how far-fetched and crazy it may sound to others. Well, your personal legend is most likely somewhere close to that, whatever is pulling at your heart. And I love the way in the book, the author talks about what brings you to tears is your treasure, is where your treasure is. And so what really touches your heart is what is your personal legend, your treasure. And I thought that it was so interesting. He was pursuing this actual treasure, but all along the way, he was learning, and he mentions this, Santiago mentions this, he learned how to speak Arabic. He met all of these wonderful people. He learned how to turn lead into gold. These are all treasures, that led him to the big treasure. As a matter of fact, I thought that the book would say that, him becoming the alchemist was the ultimate treasure. But the bonus was an actual treasure deposited from where he had begun. So he had to, take this journey all the way across the sand, the desert, to arrive back home to his treasure. So I thought that was just so profound.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And so we're a little bit over an hour now, so I think we're going to wrap up. Is there anything that you want to leave us with?
No, I think that we covered pretty much everything.
And while you're looking for that, I just want to mention Cecelia does offer Reiki and other services, other products. So she has a website, and I'm going to post that in the description area section of this video. She also has a nonprofit organization called House of Rising Sun, which is it's a place is going to offer a residential group home for young girls, teenagers that were sexually exploited. So young girls that were sex trafficked and sexually exploited in different ways. So this would be a place for them to go for rehabilitation and things of that nature. So I'll post a link to that as well.
Okay, so I'll just read an excerpt of a part that I really, really loved, and because it pertained to the heart. And one of the things that the boy asked, he says, well, why do we have to listen to our heart? The boy asked when they had made camp that day, and he's with the alchemist. And he says, because wherever your heart is, that is where you'll find your treasure. And then the boy says, but my heart is agitated. It has its dreams, it gets emotional, and it becomes passionate over a woman in the desert. It asks things of me, and it keeps me from sleeping many nights when I'm thinking about her. Well, that's good. Your heart is alive. Keep listening to what it has to say. So during the next 3 days, the two travelers passed by a number of armed tribesmen and saw others on the horizon. The boy's heart began to speak of fear. It told him stories it had heard from the soul of the world, stories of men who sought to find their treasure and never succeeded. Sometimes it frightened the boy with the idea that he might not find his treasure or that he might die there in the desert. At other times, it told the boy that it was satisfied. It had found love and riches. My heart is a traitor, the boy said to the alchemist when they had paused to rest the horses. It doesn't want me to go on. That makes sense, the alchemist answered. Naturally, it's afraid that in pursuing your dream, you might lose everything you've won. Well then, why should I listen to my heart? Because you will never again be able to keep it quiet. Even if you pretend not to have heard what it tells you, it will always be there inside of you, repeating to you what you're thinking about life and about the world. You mean I should listen even if it's treasonous? Treason is a blow that comes unexpectedly. If you know your heart well, it will never be able to do that to you because you'll know its dreams and its wishes, and it will know how to deal with it. You'll never be able to escape from your heart, so it's better to listen to what it has to say. That way, you'll never have to fear an unanticipated blow. Listen to your heart. It will never steer you wrong.
I think that was the missing key, and it's such a great way to end, because I like that's like that kind of answered the sort of the bank robber question as well, you know. So what the heart may you know want, and so it's saying to listen, but not necessarily do everything that the heart is telling you. Like if it's saying, okay, it's feeling afraid, so don't do this, but you need to do this to get to your personal legend, you know, like face the soldiers and things like that. So it's, for me, the way I interpret it is to have this awareness, this open awareness, to be in communion with the heart, and I guess also using some power of discernment and maybe a little bit of knowledge as well to kind of go with the more subtle desires of the heart, you know, the ones that are going to benefit, you know, what you're really seeking in terms of personal legend. So I don't know. That's what there's some nuance in that passage that's there.
Yeah. No, it's very powerful. So, and he's also saying, listen to your heart. If you don't, if you don't listen to your heart, it will still be there. It will continue to. You have to pay attention to your heart. So I thought that was a profound message. Yeah. It's like you can't unlearn something. You know, once you know it, once you become evolved, you can't unknow something.
Yeah.
So once your heart knows something, it's going to always remind you of what it is that you love.
Yeah. Great. So thank you for joining us. You know, I always appreciate these conversations. It gives me a chance to do some homework. I never read the book before, and always seems that when I'm reading, you know, whatever we're discussing, I'm kind of like going through some of that stuff becoming more aware of how it's happening in my own life. And
me too.
Yeah. So thank you.